Ready when you are, bud.
Yep. All right, here we go. Another episode of Ticket to Gamehendge, episode 9. Last week, I incorrectly said episode 7 when it was in fact episode 8.
Totally messed me up. I was like, shit.
Yeah, no, it was my fault. My fault 100%. Here we go. As always, we have a decent little menu going. I wanted to open up with a bit of a story, if that's okay. So my job dictates once a year we do inventory. We count everything in the building, and it's a really, really big event. We had inventory yesterday, and going into it the last 3 days, including yesterday, over the course of 3 days, I worked nearly 40 hours, which is a full work week on its own for most people. Rewarding and great, but very, very draining. And it's one of those events that as soon as it's all over, you just kind of, a weight comes off your shoulders and you just want to move past it, right? Like it's a lot. Your brain is really, really, you go down this tunnel. As I was leaving yesterday, and I don't know about you, and I'll back it up a step, my favorite part of a vacation reminds me of, there's an episode of The Simpsons where they get home from church and Bart and Lisa throw off their clothes in excitement, and they're like, it's the longest possible time before more church, right? So my favorite part of vacation is the 20 seconds between the time that I leave the door of the building I work in until the car I get into to come home, because it's the longest possible time before having to go back. And I firmly believe that the anticipation of things,
yes,
in most cases,
yes,
is the best part of those things.
Yeah.
New Year's is going to be amazing, man, because it's New Year's, and the New Year's comes and goes, and it's just like any other night for the most part, unless it's a Phish New Year's, maybe a bad example for us. But the anticipation to that event is usually better than the event itself.
You know what? Before you get back to your story, because I'm going to forget, the thought is always better or worse than the actual event. Like if there's something that you're fearful or scared about, the idea of it happening in your mind is much worse than when it actually happens.
Correct. I experience that from time to time when I'm randomly paged to customer service without an explanation as to what I'm walking into, and it could be anything. And in those 10 seconds, I'm going through all the possibilities in a Rolodex. But anyhow,
I think we should just. Oh, you can't even say who you work for, can you?
I would prefer not to, just because it's a really, really just think of a big box retail store is what I would kind of generalize it as, which there are a lot of, right? There are a lot of those. So big building with a lot of employees and a lot of moving parts, like any big box store has.
Anyways, we digress. Get back to it.
Yeah. Where was I in the story? About that moment of vacation, the anticipation.
Yeah.
I get into the car, and where I am, I'm on night 3 of 4, I'm pretty sure, of the Red Rocks run in the summer tour of 2009. They had kind of taken a break at end of June and came back very end of July. So I'm on the August 1st show, 8/1/2009. And I start it from the very beginning. And I always go in blind, as you know. Sit down in the car, start it up, put in the headphones, I hit play, and just as, you hear the crowd noise and I'm peeling out, AC/DC bag. Right? Nostalgia 101 puts me right back there, and I'm like, yes.
Yep.
Going, singing along, right? I should have recorded that because I was into it. Like I was belting out, and the windows were down. People on the sidewalk were looking at me.
Let them hear it, man. They got to hear it.
Yeah, because when you drive to the parking lot, it's like I go 20, maybe 30, tops. So as people are walking to their cars and the mall,
like peeling out.
Yeah, and I'm like, Mr. Palmer is concerned, and I'm just what $1 million or $1,000 question, and so I'm going, and then the drive gets going. Next song, Curtain Whiff.
Nice.
Sets me off, right? We talked about that last week when your wife jumped on, because that was her that would be her Phish name, the Curtain Whiff.
That was good, by the way.
Yeah. Some funny responses to that one. That put me in a great mood, and then just from there, Mound. Right, short but sweet Mound. Got a Jaboo. 12 minute, right?
It's a good jam, man. That's a good jam.
Gayuti, next. Yeah. Punch You in the Eye, and then just as I was pulling in, Tube. Had to stop Tube because I pulled into the garage. And it was just that feeling of, I guess, relief, putting everything else behind me,
Yeah.
kind of doing away with the big inventory event and just being in the moment and quite literally surrendering to the flow as I drove home and just anticipating every song. And I think, honestly, the mood that I was in, they could have played the 3 songs I put on my bathroom break song list a few weeks ago, and it would have been great. But it just kept kind of elevating in my head. And that feeling I felt is ultimately what we're trying to get other people to feel, through Phish. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking about this stuff. And it's tough to articulate. It's tough to understand if somebody's never really loved something like that. But that's ultimately what it's all about, and just to be able to log on and hit play on something like that and experience that as often as we can. Just great, right? So, I really, really enjoyed that. It was just, had me in a sweet spot. So there you go. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I like it. It's good. I think it's very relatable because, I mean, we all do that, right? Like, you finish the day, you have that time where, like, I don't know, man. I like having, so, like, right now what happens is we drive our staff member to and from work because she typically would take the bus, but because of the new bus schedule, because of COVID-19, she wouldn't be able to make it to work on time.
I got a few associates that have challenges,
100%, right? So there's she lives on the east end of the city, and we're kind of in the southwest end. So there's this time where I experience the same thing every day. I drop her off. I'm like, okay, now it's time to listen to Phish.
Yeah, that's your time.
Right? And you put it on, and you're just like, man, this is awesome. Plus, it's like the perfect time of year for that, It's like fall, you can open up the windows.
This is, for the record, we are in my favorite time of the year.
I think most people's, man. How can you not have this, be the best time of the year?
Mid-September to mid-October, right? It's for so many reasons. If you're a sporting, if it was a normal year, if you're a sporting fan, great time of year. A lot of great things happening there. If you're a fan of TV and entertainment, that's all coming back to life and great. It's beautiful outside, at least where we live, and it's the calm before the storm and the shit weather and the crap that happens later on, right? So I love this time of year. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we've learned so far. We're 9 episodes in. We're consistently talking about how to get people to like Phish. So I just wanted to kind of summarize for anybody that's joining on. We've now maybe extended to grandparents listening to the show instead of just our parents, perhaps. But not me, actually, but I'm just joking. So what we've learned so far, I think number one, we've talked about this a lot. We need to have somebody who loves music. If you're going to be a Phish fan, you've got to love music, and I think you've got to love a lot of different genres of music, or be, at least at the very least, be open-minded to them, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I would agree.
Creating an experience is essential. And there's a lot of various ways, I think, to do that. But, whether it's a great road trip to a show, if it's a experience at home where you get to watch a live Phish and you ingest something a little bit different or whatever that might be, drugs. I think there's got to be something that's a bit unique to it, because if you think about the way the live shows are set up and how they approach it, it is an experience. They're very aware that there are people in the crowd that are probably seeing the band for the first time, and they're playing to them sometimes, and they're very aware there are people in the crowd that are seeing them for the 300th time or 400th time, and they appreciate that. So,
not only that, I mean, there's plenty of evidence and plenty of comments made by the band members about the thought that goes into, creating a festival and the things that they think about for their shows, and even, even the music. I think we should add this to one of the podcasts. But I'm taking guitar lessons with. His name's Tomo Fujita. He's the guy he teaches at Berkeley, and he was John Mayer's guitar teacher.
Okay.
So just listening to I was like, hey, do you want to analyze? I was like, hey, can we analyze Reba on the next lesson? It was just really interesting to hear his thoughts, because I don't really think he listens to the Phish. So it was interesting to hear what he said, and he has no idea, how it applies to a lot of the other things that Phish has done and that they're really good at.
What was his take on Reba? But I'm really, really curious. What would he say about the song?
So he's analyzing it, right? He's listening to the music.
Yeah.
And one of the things because he teaches at Berkeley, right? He's literally an encyclopedia of music.
Right.
And I was like, okay, so I'm really interested in the middle passage, like the transition from the Bag It Tag It into the jam.
Yeah.
And and he was like, oh, that sounds like Joe Pass, and that part sounds like he was just listing all these musicians that Trey drew inspiration from in that part, and he's like, it's like cut and paste, but like with his own like influence. Like he's like, it doesn't make sense musically, but you can tell of like, he took parts that were really influential to music that he liked, and then added like his own stuff to it. So it pretty much like a live show. Like they take elements of stuff that all the guys love, and they make it their own.
We got to talk more about that kind of stuff. I love that stuff because it's something that I don't really know about musical theory. I like understanding why it resonates with me, and that's those types of things are the logical explanations that I really really enjoy.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Oh, my kids know that you and I talk every week, and apparently I just found out before we logged on that when we're talking, they walk around going, "Where's Creyshow? Where's Creyshow?"
That's awesome.
They're looking for you. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, and then moving down the list, observing the law of reciprocity. So this we talked about just to specifically apply to, I guess, kind of somebody like my wife who is open to music, really enjoys it, but isn't going to sit down usually for the most part and listen to Phish with me. So just trying to balance it out. If I'm going to ask her to do that, to obviously try to get or do something for her that is going to be rewarding for her, whether it's watching a show or a movie with her that she likes or doing an activity that she enjoys that I typically wouldn't, giving up that time. And I guess kind of your tit for tat. And then I just added surrender to the flow. And I think that goes into that somebody that is open-minded, that's willing to actually listen and give it a shot, not just dismiss it, I think would be a big part of it too. Easier said than done. So that's kind of what we've got so far. I'm sure we'll keep going down that path and learn more and discuss more. Yeah, and as I kind of segue into our next topic, I don't know about you, but every now and then Megan will say something like, "Can we listen to something other than Phish?" So what better thing to put on than the new Trey Anastasio band album, right? It's like the best. Can we listen to something other than Phish? Sure. How about Mike and Leo? Click. How about
It reminds me of. I can't remember who posted it, but it was that one comment where him and his wife were going somewhere. It was like an hour drive, and he wanted to put on Phish. She's like, "Okay, just one song." So he puts on like, Ruby Waves from
43 minutes. Yeah, 3 minutes. Yeah, I've got a good recording of myself singing Ruby Waves. We'll tease that again. I've got that on there. It's we were at the debut of that song, as a matter of fact. Look at us. Yeah, so Burn It Down. I think pretty much right after we logged off last week, it was announced that it was coming out a few days later. I think you texted me within an hour or two of us getting off of here that it was coming out. And I now know, remember I texted you early Friday morning that I couldn't find it. It wasn't on the app yet, but the reason I couldn't find it is because I was searching for Trey Anastasio band and tab, and it's out there as Trey Anastasio, not the band. So that's why I couldn't find it. I found it later in the day, of course, and then listened to it, most of it on the way home Friday, and then over the weekend a little bit more. What are your thoughts?
It's awesome, man. Like,
yeah.
It's an awesome album. I don't know. It doesn't excite me like how Phish excites me, but it's good, and I like it.
Yeah, it's definitely a rich sound. A little bit more of the percussion. You can immediately feel the differences from Phish. There's the like familiarity, of course, because of the songs themselves. Yeah, it's sort of interesting to listen to. It's almost like a Phish cover band, but not in a weird way because the vocals are identical. Although the cadence and the timing are a little bit different. Like I found Camel Walk from the Camel Walk that I'm used to was a little bit different.
Yep.
And it really made me appreciate Trey's flexibility to be able to, shift how he plays certain songs with that group that are so familiar to him. I mean, I don't know how easy that would be, especially if you've written it. Because as Phish, they don't do a ton of that.
The horns are cool, like it's just, you're right. It sounds, because I've heard Phish play the song so many times, it does kind of sound like a really good cover band of Phish.
Yeah. Feels a little bit more blues based as well, obviously, with the types of musicians he's playing with. I almost find that Trey's singing in a lower register for a lot of the songs too. He's got more of a baritone going in some of the vocals compared to what you typically hear in Phish. Clearly a different energy. I really got a sense of that. You know, the size of the crowd is evidently, you can hear it. It's much smaller. It doesn't have the same roar kind of to it. You can hear more of the theater type of atmosphere. Yeah, I noted down a couple of highlights for me. Every time I listen to the song, I get deeper and deeper into it. About to Run, like it. Man,
it's a good album, man. That's a good album.
That song just when it gets escalating, and he just starts going burning. I'm like, ugh, I love it. So good. I thought that, and it's evident to me. To back it up a quick step, my gauge whether or not I've really, really enjoyed a movie or a television show is if I'm still thinking about it in the days following. You know, so if I go to see a movie and the next day I'm still thinking about that movie, that's kind of my gauge to tell me that I enjoyed it, that I liked it.
Yeah, but hold on. Let me play devil's advocate. Could it be, because the first thing that comes to mind is the Joker, that movie that came out with Joaquin.
I still haven't seen it.
Okay.
We haven't.
Okay.
Time to see it.
So
okay.
Here's my point. I'm not going to spoil anything to you. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody listening. There's no spoilers. But I didn't it was well done, and it was excellent, and it was thought-provoking, but I didn't like it. Like, it was thought-provoking, like, on the negative, right?
Yeah. But did you appreciate the art behind it and everything that goes into making a movie like that? Is it from that point of view? Or?
No, I didn't like it's interesting. Objectively, it was excellent. I think it should have won the Oscar. I think it was the best movie of last year. I just didn't like the sense of life behind the artist.
Got it.
You know what I mean? Like, so I think there's an objectivity to say, like, this is an incredible piece of art. I just dislike it because it doesn't resonate with my sense of life. Right? So it's valid. It makes sense. It's well done in every aspect other than I don't like it.
Okay.
You know?
All right. Commitment. I'm going to watch that tonight.
It's excellent. Like, again, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It's just, there's some scenes that are just like, oh my God.
Yeah, Megan and I have talked about watching it for a long time. It's just one of those ones we just haven't.
Yeah, you should watch it. Everyone should watch it.
Yeah.
But I didn't like it, but I couldn't stop. I still can't stop thinking about it sometimes.
So, safe to say, not your favorite Todd Phillips movie?
Safe to say. What
is your favorite Todd Phillips movie?
I'm going to have to go with, no disrespect to Phish, but I'm going to have to go with Old School.
Yeah. Yeah, especially because we have our own personal Frank the Tank in our circle of friendship, right? It's but look at the career he's had, though, right? Todd Phillips. I mean, to be, incredible.
It's interesting, like talking about that, and just having watched, Bittersweet Motel recently. Mm-hmm. It's funny. Like I understand the band signed up for it. I don't like the way they treat the band. I don't like the way that they treat the band. I don't necessarily like. There's parts like with the Trey, the latest one, like Between Me and My Mind. There are parts that I wish I didn't get to see that that made me uncomfortable and that I think are personal, and I don't think anyone should have access to that type of stuff.
Yeah, I feel the same way about those things when I think about some conversations I've had with my parents or my dad or whatever, and it's between me and him.
That's right.
It takes an incredible amount of courage and vulnerability to put that out there, though. I mean, that probably couldn't have been easy,
So I don't think, I have no idea. I don't even care to find out. I think that it was a conversation that was rehashed on camera that's already happened. Which would make it easier.
Sure. I think a lot of reality TV is like that.
I think so.
Semi-scripted, and I think most people can tell. I say all the time, people can smell bullshit a mile away, and you can tell when somebody's genuinely doing something or if they're acting in the moment.
Or maybe it's just part of me that hopes that it is, and that wasn't like, a moment between a daughter and a father, or a father and a son that was captured, like that.
But I think you're right about Bittersweet Motel, because I'm thinking here, just as we're talking, that we went to see that in the theater. We were lucky that we lived in a city that was actually screening that movie when it came out. And it was funny too, because in some senses it almost felt like a bit of a live Phish experience, because if you remember, there were people there that in the little bits of music that were playing, they actually got up like they were at the show and started. I remember us, we were on the far right. Right?
Yeah.
And I remember looking over to the left at people moving around. We're like, holy cow, look at this. I've never seen this in a movie theater. But I think that's a movie that even when I was sort of off the train, I would still pop in and watch from time to time. And I must have seen it, I don't know, 20 to 30 times easily. And I think it really kind of shaped my vision of the band and how they are. And the more I listen, the more we kind of get away from that, the more I realize I don't think that's really how it really was. There's some darkness in there. There's some using the music to play off what looks to be a sad moment.
Here's what I think is going on. Just hear me out. There is one of the best trolls of all time in the music industry is Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
So Frank would sit down and do an interview, right? Yep. And so what happened? I don't remember where I saw this or where I was watching it. Sorry, there's a fire truck that's going to come by.
There it is.
Yep. And of course, people don't know how to drive, right? So like everyone's just kind of waiting in the middle here.
Some bad drivers out there.
So bad.
I need to get a dash cam, because I've seen so many things where that's the only thing that's going to save me is a dash cam. Anyways.
So he was doing an interview, and the interviewer knew nothing about Frank Zappa, and it was obvious, like by the questions. And he's like, so, you have this big band. How come you don't have any women in your band? That was the question. He just hired. Like he had, like literally, they just showed a clip of like the xylophone player. I don't know the names of his musicians, but like he had 2 females in his band. He goes off, oh, they should be at home. They're obviously, mentally weaker, so they can't remember the parts. Right? Like, just giving it to him, but like straight-faced.
Right.
I'm like, that's excellent, man. So I think part of like Bittersweet Motel, at least like the parts with Trey, like I know in the earlier part, like from what I've seen, there's definitely a bigger chip on his shoulder, but I don't know, man. I think they just kind of portrayed him like that.
Yeah. The last thought on Bittersweet Motel, which is a nice little side topic, is I was listening to the interview of Ezra Koenig. He's the lead singer and songwriter for Vampire Weekend.
Yeah.
Tom Marshall had him on his podcast, Under the Scales, last fall when the new Vampire Weekend album was coming out. And do you ever listen to Vampire Weekend?
Not really, no.
Great. They're
really
I bet.
Good.
You should, like, if you're looking for something different, very world music, right? Like think Peter Gabriel. But great. And their drummer is a Phish head, like big fan.
Yeah.
So it's starting to bleed within the band, and he was kind of talking about like now is the first time that they're going out and doing shows where they're mixing it up, or they're doing different sets every night. They'd never done that before.
Yeah.
It was heavily pushed by their drummer about the live experience, because now what? You have these songs, and he's realized that he didn't realize early on how important the live show is to the brand of their band, and how important that live experience is to engage with fans and to keep them with you. But they got talking about Bittersweet Motel, and the part that was really interesting that they were talking about was when Todd Phillips reads Trey the bad review. And how he can relate to that as an artist who, has read some bad reviews or has been given, and just the look of confusion and amazement on Trey's face, as in, I'm being judged on something that I'm not even doing. Like they clearly don't even understand what the point of what we're doing is, and yet here I am being judged on it. And that was really interesting to listen to.
The part that always gets me, is like, with like critics and cynics and skeptics, and that stuff is like have a nice life, because your life is just based on telling people what not to do and criticizing them. right? That has to eventually wear on you as a person.
Mm-hmm. Who was it? I remember I heard Henry Rollins quote it, and he gave the credit to the person that said it. And the quote was, critics are the equivalent of, I think he said something like, critics are the equivalent of the generals that get up on the hill after the battle and shoot the survivors. I think something like that.
Yeah.
Right? I have to find that quote. Anyway, so just, yes, wrapping up, like Burn It Down. Again, enjoy listening to it. Really, really good sound. A little bit different. Stuck in my head. Rise. Yeah, that's how we got talking about movies. So Rise, Come Together. That's been in my head. I've been singing that a lot. And I think, and I don't know her name, but the female vocalist that jumps in, I think adds value to that song, right?
For sure,
in that chorus. The other thing that I took away is there's eight players in that band, and it made me think about how great Phish is to create the sound that they do with only the four of them. I mean, really, it sounded at times, I only thought two people were playing in tap. It was just, it really kind of enforced my love of Phish. Nice little deviation, it's nice little side quest, I guess you could say, but and really makes me appreciate Trey's flexibility. He clearly is addicted to performing. Gotta be, right? Like addicted. And I've been wondering who this is since I heard the interview. I remember John Mellencamp was on Stern a few years ago, and he's tight. He's tight with Dave and Neil Young, and like they're in a pretty big inner circle of these guys that are, over that hump. And he said that he's got a good friend. He asked him why he plays so much, like why he plays in his band and in other bands. And it's because his self-image of himself is so ugly and so bad. He needs that from the crowd.
John Cougar?
John Mellencamp said that about one of his friends. He didn't say who it was. And since then, I've been trying to think of who it was. If it's Dave, because I think he's one of those guys that the band's not playing. He finds solo gigs. He's doing something all the time. Trey's another one that never goes more than a few months without getting out there and touring and playing. I wonder. And that's that's 4 or 5 years ago too. So that might change.
That's like psychologizing, man. Like unless somebody comes flat out and says that, how would you know that?
He said that. He asked him. He said, why do you play so many shows? Like you don't need to. Like, and they said that. Yeah, I just don't like myself enough that I need that from the crowd. I need that from the fans.
That sounds awful.
So I'm going to float it out there, and after listening to Burn It Down, it kind of inspired my next top three, which are the top three side projects. And I think I have my top three. Have you given that any thought? What would you put in there?
So
I have a clear number one, a very clear number one.
Oh, Oysterhead's number one.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
But does the Dead and Company count as a side project? Like that kind of stuff?
I'm gonna have to float out some criteria, huh?
Yeah, you're gonna have to chop it up.
Then what I'm probably gonna do is make a list. So the criteria that I'll take is anything that's available in the app, and I'll make that list.
Okay.
Right? They're officially saying this. So Vita Blue, Mike's side projects, Tab, whatever. Like, what do we got in here? We've got. Again, every time I go on here, I'm amazed that this thing even exists. Honestly, browse by year, album, tour, song, artist.
So true, man. We're so lucky.
But like we've talked about, does it prohibit people from developing the same kind of love and attachment because it's easier? They don't have to put in the effort, right? We used to play CDs over and over and over again and make the effort to go out and wait for that album to drop.
You know what, man? It's funny. I think that with stuff like accessibility, it more exposes people, versus like makes them a certain way. Like, so for example, take a dating app or even take social media, right? There's like all this like stuff out there about what people are becoming because of these things.
Right. There's a great new Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma. That's exactly right.
I'm postulating that people were always this way, But because of these things, you can be this way faster and worse. And that's why it's actually accelerating who people really are versus making them that way. Like I heard someone like cutting apart, like Tinder or whatever. Oh, I got ghosted. He just wanted to have sex with me. I'm like, yeah, pretty much sounds like when we were 16 years old. Like this is the same shit that's been happening. Now you can just do it faster because it's on an app. Like you used to ghost somebody in high school. Like you would like hide behind your buddies. So like you didn't have to talk to her. The same shit.
Right.
Right.
Just played in a different way.
So I'm saying that for people who are because some of the Phish fans changed my mind a little bit. Like when I posted that question, I was like, yeah, but this makes sense. I think people who want to dive deep into music will always find a way to do it. And the ones that don't, that are just like, they're gonna keep being teeny boppers and listening to Billie Eilish 67,000 times for right now, and then when she's had her moment, she's gonna be done, and it's gonna be like the 2020 compilation album. Oh, I remember this song.
Yeah. Interesting. That's really interesting. So in the app, or I guess the officially listed side projects, actually quite a bit. Almost half of them start with Trey's name, though. You've got Ghost of the Forest, which is essentially Trey.
That's Trey Anastasio band, no?
Yeah, it's Trey and John Fishman. He plays drums on most of it, I think. Mike Gordon solo, Mike Gordon and Leo, Mike Gordon and the Benevento Russo something or other, which I don't really know. Oysterhead, Mike Clear #1. We were fortunate enough to see them in 2001, Massey Hall, which was still one of my top shows that I still talk about with people. Page solo, Pork Tornado from 2002. What is that?
I don't know.
Okay. I might have to commit to going through all of this stuff at some point. Trey Anastasio and Don Hart, Trey Anastasio and the Scorchio Quintet, Trey Anastasio and the Undectet, Trey Anastasio Band, Trey Anastasio, Mike Gordon, and the Benevento Russo duo, a one-off in 2006, which would have definitely fueled some rumors, I'm sure. Vita Blue and the Spam All-Stars. So right now, I know my top two. The third one I have to do some thinking on, but my top two are Oysterhead and Ghost of the Forest. I think Ghost of the Forest.
Oh, Ghost of the Forest is excellent. And the more again, this goes back to developing relationships with the songs, right? Because I listened to the album a bunch.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, these songs are kind of cool, but then you hear Sea of Stars, a million times live, and you're like, oh my God, this song is incredible.
Yes, and I went back through and listened to every 2019 show not too long ago, and obviously those songs play throughout. Like right now, I'm in 2009, and all the Joy songs are coming up a lot.
Which is
right?
That's a great album, by the way.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about the phases. I was even thinking about yesterday when I was leaving that. Not leaving, but as I was listening to that set that I talked about earlier, AC/DC Bag 1.0, Curtain Width 1.0, Mound 1.0, Got a Jabu 1.0, Coyote 1.0, Punch You in the Eye 1, Tube 1.0. So most of my favorite songs are 1.0, but I enjoy them being played in 3.0 Phish more.
That's interesting.
So when it's something that I didn't clarify when we talked about earlier on how we love 3.0, I thought maybe incorrectly that we were talking about live 3.0. I don't think about obviously there's a songwriting and there's the different stages, but when we were talking about that, when we said that we love 3.0 Phish, I figured we were talking about how it is now, how the shows are constructed now, how the sets are so much more eclectic and unpredictable, and maybe how the past gets compressed.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be as many frequent weird things like the S show that I texted you about the other day, or the big events, festivals. They're just not as frequent now, it seems. But overall, 3.0, that's what I thought we were talking about.
So, okay, this is interesting. This is probably a topic for another day. But I don't know, man. I don't know what it is about it, but I think the more time that passes between the releases and the next release, the more you have time to develop a relationship and fall in love with the song. Because I didn't love Ghost of the Forest when it first came out. Like, it was good. Mm-hmm. It was good. But it wasn't like, oh my God, this is the best album. I need to listen to this. But now a lot of those songs, when I hear them, I'm like, I really like this song.
Yeah. Yeah, you just made me think about something too, about how right now I don't have the ability to state the date of my favorite Piper or the date of my favorite Twist or whatever that might be. And I think the reason for it is because I've crammed a lot of listening into a short amount of time. Mm-hmm. I haven't, experienced those versions of those songs over years and trying to find copies of them online that were taped or whatever that might be. Yeah. I haven't gone through that. I've listened to so many Pipers over the past year that it's tough for me to listen to it multiple times and have it sit with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
because of the app, I can go in.
But it doesn't happen like that, my man. You're the order and you're confusing the order. What happens is you have a great experience with a song and you're like, this is the best version of this song that I've ever heard. And then it becomes the standard to which all the other ones get compared to.
Right.
Got it?
Right. Like Al Franken's favorite Althea.
Like Al Franken's favorite Althea. That's played at like 17 beats per minute.
Is it? Yeah. So it's a song I don't know well, but that's a great clip.
I have a great experiment. Of any of the songs, any Phish song, what's your favorite date? What's your favorite version? You gotta have at least one where you're like, shit, that was the best.
Tweezer, 12/30/19 last year.
Wow. Okay. So now you gotta go. I don't know, man. Tweezer's gonna be a tough one. So now you gotta go back to like. Now you gotta go to like Nutter Setter, right? 97. You gotta listen to like all those versions, and then you compare.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
Yeah, I don't know if my brain is wired that way. In that I could do it over time, I suppose.
Of course, over time, buddy. Because the way that we've all done it is, you hear that version and you're like, that was the greatest thing ever. And then next year you hear another version and you're like, shit, that was awesome, but it wasn't as good as as that one. That's how it goes.
Right. Like the stash from our show last year, for example. Yeah. Got it. Cool. All right, sir. Good chat today.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. Yeah. A lot of nice little sidetrack stuff that we didn't plan, which is always good, which is the point.
Yes.
Right? The plan is there is no plan. Yes, and. Okay, good, sir. I will talk to you next week. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
See you, bud.